cheery little bit of uplift for your Wednesday night. Hey,
I
everybody.
love a happy ending.
Okay, my first question is between you and Armando Iannucci, who created Veep and Death of a Salesman. Why are Scots so good at insults?
I don't know. I think it's what they call the slagging culture. There, you know, you kind of you grow up and everybody insults each other. I mean, I kind of you know, you kind of when you grow up in a household in Scotland, by the time you go to school, you've already been insulted by every member of your family every single day. You know, so you're prepared for it all. You know, I don't know. It's just something that seems to be part of the culture. I don't know why.
And do you really all hate Christmas? Is that true?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, the Scots have been kind of... New Year was always a big thing. And it's like, you know, Christmas has become such a global kind of festival of consumerist, capitalist greed that we've kind of tried to buy into it. But it is against our best instincts, really.
Whereas New Year's is a party, so you can just...
Yeah, I mean, New Year, you don't have to... Kind of New Year, you kind of spend time with the people that you want to spend time rather than the people that you have to spend time with. That's a big theory behind it, yeah.
All right, so your mom was a waitress, your dad was a social worker. What kind of kid...
Social worker? No.
Where did I get that?
I don't know.
He
was a dock worker.
A dock worker. That's a big difference.
Same thing in Leith, like, yeah.
So what kind of a kid were you?
I don't know really. I think I was quite I don't know. I mean, what kind of kid is I? I think I was pretty happy, kind of easygoing, sort of untroubled kid. I think, and a lot, you know. But I was always conscious of everybody. The extended family all lived within a few sort of kind of doors away, so it was very traditional in that you just go around the houses. You could leave your house, you could go to your granny's place, and you could go to one auntie's and the other auntie's and the other auntie's, and you always got looked after. You always got kind of fed and kind of, you know, you could kind of you had the sense that the whole place was kind of taking care of you in a way.
And is there something in particular that you absorbed, do you think, from your early years, your background, that kind of made you you? Is there something you carried forward?
Kind of. I think that I was quite hyperactive when I was younger, and I think the good thing about it was I was kind of forgiven, basically. Probably indulged a bit as well. You know, I think it's like kind of you know, when you get a kid that's a bit cheeky and sort of and nippy, you can either shoot them down or you can just say, oh, this he's a bit of an arsehole, but just let him kind of, you know, he'll grow out of it. And I kind of never did, really, but I was kind of, you know, so I was indulged. But I think that having that kind of license, I think was quite important for me, you know, in terms of being able to get the confidence to do what, you know, because I think in any kind of sort of art form, to have the confidence to put yourself out there, to put your stuff out there, is a very, very big thing. I think it stops a lot of people who are very gifted from becoming kind of like writers or musicians or kind of cinema people. That the idea that you do something and you have to put it out there I think can be a very challenging thing for people.
Mm-hmm.
I have to take this out, sorry.
So you moved.
That's better.
There you go. So you moved to London. What was your first reaction to London?
Well, I was fortunate because my auntie lived in London, and my father's brother moved down there to work on the railways, and so I used to go down there from the summer holidays, and it was, you know, so it was like a home from home, and you know, so it was like when I moved down there, it was a very seamless transition to, you know, it was like just, again, it was like sort of, I was very lucky to have a family down there basically, so that I could just go down there, get work, and you know, I stayed in a nice family home again. So it wasn't, and I moved out of that, you know, and got my own place and moved into a squat, but I didn't have any real difficulty in transitioning.
So it wasn't like running away from home. It wasn't.
No, it was like you look after the little bastard now for a while, like.
One of your punk bands was called Stairway 13, which refers to an infamous accident. I
don't know where this comes from.
It's
but
not
again,
true?
it's more nonsense. Like, there was a guy called Eric in this band, the Pubic Lice, that I used to play in, who wrote a song called Stairway 13. So I don't know where this is all kind of got mixed up in the sands of time.
The evils of Wikipedia, I guess. But you do seem unafraid to offend people's delicate sensibilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you try to get a reaction from yourself, basically. If you don't get a reaction from yourself, you're not going to get a reaction from anybody else. And to me, it's always like, I always have this thing when I write anything, I think I give it to that, the what will my mother think of it test. Like, and you think to yourself, God, my mum's going to read this, and you start to cringe inside, and you go, oh my God. And you think, that's exactly the reaction I want. Brilliant, this is going out there,
So are you shockable?
Yeah, very much, like, yeah. I get, it's like, I get shocked by things that are, they're kind of, not so much shocked, but I get a reaction from things that are very, I'm the first person to cry in the cinema at a kind of, romantic scene. And especially kind of, the cheesier it is, the more tearful I become. It's like, Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, Vera Ellen, Rosemary Clooney, White Christmas. At the end, I'm just buckets of tears. Every Christmas day, I just have to watch this and I have to cry my eyes out, basically, like, And it's like, any kind of sort of, it's horrible when you go to the cinema, and if you go with a wife or a girlfriend, they're kind of sort of, it's some cheesy kind of romantic comedy. They're sitting there, like, and I'm, God, how did this happen? But if I go to see a violent kind of film where people are getting shot and blown to bits, they're going like, oh my God, how can I? I'm just like, this is, I don't have that suspension of disbelief. I think this is actors, and this is like prosthetics, and this is kind of special effects. And it looks funny, I don't know if people have seen the movie Machete. The bit where he rips the guy's intestines out and does a Tarzan swing. I just laugh my head off every time I see that scene. It's great.
But romantic comedy.
And the way they set it up, the camera's on the camera just cuts straight away close up, and this kind of this horrible kind of surgical kind of saw thing. You think this is great. I know it's going to happen now, but that kind of thing doesn't bother me at all. I do, horror movies can sometimes get to me, an atmospheric horror movie, the kind of Blair Witch Project type of thing, The Exorcist and all that. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, now I'm afraid that all my facts are wrong. Is it true that you were arrested a couple of times?
No, a couple. I mean, in my life, or when you're talking about last week, talking about tonight.
In your life.
Yeah, talking about today. Yeah.
Tonight you haven't been arrested.
I mean, like, yeah, loads and loads of times. Like, yeah. I mean, there was one time in my teens and early 20s I couldn't go outside the door without getting arrested. But yeah, I mean, not recently. I think the last time I ever spent a night in the police cells would be. This is embarrassing. It'd be maybe the late 90s.
Oh.
God.
So tell us a little bit about your life of crime. What kind of criminal were you?
Basically a thief, like a shoplifter. But that was a drug habit thing, basically. And also like kind of fraud, kind of sort of, social security frauds, kind of insurance scams, that kind of thing. The usual thing that people do. The stuff everybody does. Come on. Work with me on this, Toronto.
So bits of Trainspotting were autobiographical. Like, how bad would you say your drug habit was at the low? Were you ever in danger?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, without, to be more a bit serious about it, I mean, it's not the kind of thing you want to be doing. It's like, it gets to a point where you become utterly delusional because you rationalize everything you do. And, but, you do get into, but I think you do it through a young person's lens. And it's when you're young, when you're in your kind of late teens, early 20s, you don't have a sense of mortality in the same way you do when you're older. That only kicks in when you get about kind of 27, 28. And you kind of think of yourself as being invincible, and you think it doesn't really matter, and you think all the relationships that you burn down, you've got time to put them right and all that, and it'll all come good, and you'll eventually kind of stop this and all that, So I think that you kind of, the first year it didn't seem to be a problem to me, and it probably was. But the second year I was aware that things were kind of falling apart, that your relationships have changed, you've got a whole different set of friends and associates, you're not really seeing the people you used to hang out with, your physical appearance has changed, your hygiene has changed, your health has declined, and you can't really hold down work, and you can't, so you see, and you're getting into trouble with the police because you're kind of doing a lot of stealing and thieving. So these things do kind of happen, basically, so you kind of get to that point where it kind of loses its appeal, and I think that if you're addicted to drugs, you have to have a good reason to stay addicted to drugs. I mean, anybody can become addicted, but you have to have a good reason to stay addicted.
And did you have a good reason to stop? Was it
I
one
didn't
big
really,
thing?
yeah.
Or?
I didn't have any reason to stay addicted. There was I had a lot of, I had some kind of short-term issues, like kind of bereavement, relationship breakdown, that being younger, I didn't have the emotional vocabulary to kind of get past them. And I had a kind of friendship with somebody that was like a kind of folie à deux. It was a bit like Renton and Sick Boy. I mean, neither of these two would have become junkies if they hadn't met each other. It was like a kind of, it was like they're both steeped in it. That whole kind of what they saw as a subversive heroin culture through music and stuff like that. And I was very much the same. But so all these reasons, the reasons to dabble and to get involved and to get into it, but they're not reasons to stay. I mean, I wasn't kind of sexually abused by a strange uncle or anything like that, or I wasn't. There was nothing that I didn't have any kind of sort of mental health issues or kind of prone to depression or anything like that. So there's nothing really, or any physical kind of pains that made me self-medicate. So there was nothing really there's nothing compelling to make me stay on drugs. And when you get to that point, you just think to yourself, well, why am I doing this? It doesn't really make any sense anymore. So you get off at that point, I think.
So was it a relief to be a kind of solid citizen for a while?
No, it was horrible. It was fucking terrible. Like, it left a massive void. I was kind of, I went into, I had this responsible job, and I got 2 rapid promotions, and I did an MBA, and I was bored shitless. I thought, this is terrible. I much liked it better when I was lying in this mattress in this squat, kind of surrounded by needles and all that. I was having some kind of fun in a strange way. This is no fun at all, So it was like, and I wanted to, I was still kind of unhappy and discontented because I still wasn't doing what I wanted to do.
And is that when you realized you wanted to write?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, I thought it was music that I would kind of I would be into doing. I thought that was how it would sort of pan out for me. But unfortunately, it never really happened that way. And but I did realize, but if you write a song, and I was writing ballads, and ballads are just stories set to music, and then I realized, well, the music's not happening, so just carry on with the stories. So it all kind of, it kind of moved on from there, basically.
Okay. So, I mean, Trainspotting was a big success pretty much right out of the gate. What does that feel like, like a blast of success like that?
Brilliant. It's just absolutely, it's fucking great, basically. You know, you think to yourself, this is fantastic. You know, I've got all this money. I can kind of travel. There's all these exotic women throwing themselves at me. This is absolutely fabulous. Like, you know, there's no downside whatsoever.
So being rich and famous is everything it's cracked up to be.
Well, it was for me at the time. I mean, it's like you kind of, being Scottish, you always invent problems for yourself. You go, this is terrible. I've got everything I need. What's the point now? So you invent problems for yourself, but there's really none. You know, I mean, it's.
It is interesting, though, in a lot of your books and in Dead Men's Trousers, certainly, you have a continued interest in failure and all different kinds of failure. And the contrast of that with your actual success is pretty interesting. What do you think makes you still interested in that subject?
Well, I mean, that's basically the human condition, isn't it? We all aspire to failure. You know, we're kind of, we know we're going to fail at some point because we're all, you know, our bodies are going to fail, we're going to die. You know, it's just the whole, as they say in The Lion King, it's the whole circle of life. You know? But I mean, it's like, you know, so we're kind of, this is our lot, basically. And we aspire to failure, and it's the way we learn, isn't it, through failure? You know, I mean, and the great thing about failure is it comes in all these different forms. You know, you can fail in any number of ways. And the whole thing about, I think the thing about life we try and do is not fail in the same way, because that becomes really boring. But it's like when we fail in different ways, we learn from that and we move on and all that. And we get distracted from our failure quest by success, because success teaches us nothing. We just become arseholes when we're successful. We go, oh, look at me. Look at this new book's gone to #1 on the Sunday Times bestseller list. Isn't that great? You know, yeah. And everybody goes, oh, fuck off, you boring bastard. Like, yeah. So you don't really learn anything from it. You just learn how to be an arsehole for six months or so. And then you work to your next failure. And you go, my God, this is terrible. And you think, no, it was actually quite brilliant. You know, I've learned a lot of stuff about things and about life. Yeah.
So does the writing come easily to you, or do you have like a, you know, is it expanding, attracting, good, bad? Do you get up every morning and do 4 hours? Like, how does it work for you?
I try and get up at the same time, kind of quite early, and do, you know, sort of work for a couple of hours, and then kind of get some breakfast, then work for another hour or two, then go to the gym or go to the beach, and then come back, have a bit of lunch, maybe print some stuff off, take it to a cafe and mess around there for a bit with it and see what I've done. If it's a dull day, kind of go to the cinema. If it's a nice day, maybe go to the beach. Then in the evening, just kind of relax and, you know, take the evening off and then do it all over again the next day.
I don't hear a lot of angst in there. You're not a torturer.
It's great fun. It's great fun. You know, it's like you think, I've got this blank page that I can just put anything on, and you know, it's fabulous. You know.
God. That alone is an incredibly enviable thing, right?
Yeah, it's great. It's great. The thing is, you get publishers, or if it's a film or script or a TV script, you know, you get producers and agents, and they start going, oh, when's this going to be done? Nah, it'll be done when it's done.
So why do you think you keep coming back to Begbie, Renton, Sick Boy, and Spud? Like, what is it about those guys?
I think it's in a way it's a bit like kind of you don't really. I don't know. In some ways, you don't really have that much choice over the book you write. Really, I think it just comes up, and you know, it's like I think a lot of I've done 2 books that have been kind of Trainspotting themed now. I did The Blade Artist, and now I've done the Dead Men's Trousers, and I think that really. It came out of working on Trainspotting 2 for so long with John Hodge and Danny Boyle and Andrew MacDonald. We were working, you know, working together for quite a long time and talking about the characters and what they might be doing now and where they would be. And then the actors got involved, and again for another 6 months talking to them about what would be going on with the characters, and really it dredged them back into the forefront of thinking about that. So it probably came out of that. Yeah.
So how involved are you generally with the movies that are made out of your books? Do you like to be involved with do you read drafts of the screenplays? Do you get involved in the casting? Do you come to set?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the relationship you have with the with all the filmmakers, like with the producer, with the director, and it varies. I mean, my kind of my ideal thing is not to really be that involved at all. But if you're too standoffish and you're the writer, they get a bit paranoid because they think to yourself, this guy's going to say that he had nothing to do with it. He's not part of the team. And if the film bombs, this bastard's going to slag it off and distance himself from it, So they want you to be a bit involved. But if you get too involved, they think, this fucker's going to interfere in everything and stop us from doing the film we want to do, So it is, isn't it? It's like, I mean, on the last one, on Trainspotting 2, I was one of the producers, and it was like, so I got this money and this executive producer credit, and I thought, well, what do they want me to do? Do they want me to actually come in and do stuff, maybe make tea or clean the toilets or something like that? Or do they want me just to fuck off until the film's shot, and then when it comes out, do press with them and all that kind of stuff, or and do my Mikey Forrester turn and then go, basically, or so you kind of you feel your way into it. It's I think they like you being around, basically, but it depends. It just depends on the kind of relationship you have. Principally, when it's it's a producer that's very important before the film shoots. The relationship you have with them. When you're on set, it's a relationship you have with the director. And afterwards, it's really the relationship you have with the editor, and then with the whole kind of the team of them again, And everyone is a slightly different relationship. Had like Rob Hayden from Toronto shot Ecstasy, and had a good relationship with Rob, and I've had a good relationship with Paul McGuigan. Very good relationship with John Baird, and a very good one with Danny Boyle. So I've been very lucky with the people that I've worked with, and I think you have to be very careful about who you work with and who you sell the rights to, because you're kind of stuck with them, really, basically. And it is like it is almost like kind of it's almost like having a kind of because when you make a film, you make it's not just the film's there for all time, basically. So you kind of have a strange lifetime relationship with whoever you work with in film and TV, because you're making something that's going to last them forever. So it really has to be it's an important relationship. So it really has to be the right people.
Are you protective of your book when it's being transformed, or do you just let it go?
No, I let it go. It's like I think that I know what it's a different medium, and you realize that you can't. You've got to let people make the movie they want to make. If you try and you can't see your book as some kind of mausoleum that has to be curated by somebody who's making something in a different medium. And you don't. I mean, I know what the book's like. The book's going to be there. There's not been a single word, a single page of a book that's been changed by being made into a film. The book's still there. The film's got to be a different beast. It's got to be. Cinema's very different. It's like when you're sitting and reading a book, you're basically the filmmaker. You're making the film in your head, and you can stop that anytime you like, or you can change it, or you can skip over bits that are uncomfortable. When you're watching a movie, you're a prisoner of the filmmaker's vision in a way. So a movie has to be much more conscious of the audience than the book does. So I think it's like so you have to be aware that it has to be a different animal altogether. And filmmaking is such a collaborative art, and novel writing is probably the most individualistic art that you can think of. So you have to be aware of the differences. And also, I know my interpretation of the story. I don't want to see that again on the screen. I want to see something a bit different, you know. I want to see something that's a little bit of a change.
So who here saw Filth for the first time tonight? Oh, a lot of people. That's great. It sort of asks, how much is too much, right? Did you ever think, okay, can I really have a dead brother and an estranged daughter and a little bit of cross-dressing? Like, is there such a thing as over the top, or is over the top where you like to be?
I think, really, it's like I tend to write from character, basically, and if you get the character right, you can have anything happen to that character that informs where that character's at, basically. And I think that the audience will go with it, provided they see there's a consistency in the character, they see there's a sort of some kind of behavioural internal consistency, and also when they see the impact of that character's behaviour, both on them but also on the people around them. I think they'll go with it.
Filth took a really long time to come to the screen, though, like 15 years. Is that right? What was the journey?
Oh, the journey was kind of quite a strange one, really, because Trainspotting had done well, so it was like kind of, and Filth was supposed to be the next big one, and I sold it to Harvey Weinstein at Miramax, and you know Harvey Weinstein. You've heard of, you've all heard of the guy, like, yeah. But so I sold it to Harvey Weinstein, and we were talking about this, in his hotel suite in bathrobes. When no, we were chatting, but he sold it to me, and it was like he had a company, he had Miramax, and he had a company that he bought in London called HAL. So it was like HAL Miramax, and it was their first acquisition, basically, is Miramax HAL, and he paid me a lot of money for it, basically, and he's going, this is going to be big, and it's going to be bigger than fucking Trainspotting, you know, and he kind of, and I thought, well, this is great, this is going to be huge, and then I heard nothing for months, I was phoning him up and all that. You kind of get round the house. He's, nah, he's not here. He's not taking it. Can you leave a message? Nah. And eventually, to his credit, there's not a lot to his credit, but he did. but he came back and he said that he goes like, he says, when are you making this movie? He goes, I'm not making it. And I goes, oh. And he goes like, and I was quite, I said, well, when can I get the rights back, and I'll give you the money back? And it was quite a lot. And he goes, the rights are in dispute between Miramax and HAL. The two companies are split up again, and we're in dispute. We're suing the rest. So with all this stuff about who owned the rights to it between Miramax and HAL, and it'd be 5 years before the rights would revert back to me. And I said, well, can I give you this like kind of 500 grand back, basically, for the rights to it? He says, nothing would give me more pleasure than to take 500 grand of a schmuck like you, but I can't do it. It's not in my power. I go, oh, fair enough, like, fuck, So that was that, and so that was like 5-6 years, kind of, 2 years planning, and another 5 years down the drain, and what happened was that, I was trying to get it made, and we went with different. We had a guy who was a very good kind of young director. We sold the rights to somebody else, and this person was, they got this director involved, this producer who was a friend of mine. She was a really good producer, and she got the rights to it. And they got this director guy who was a shit-hot director, but he fancied himself as a writer. And I got a friend lined up to do the screenplay, who's actually my screenwriting partner, Dean Kavanagh. And Dean did an absolutely terrific screenplay. And this director guy, I don't like it, I'm going to do the screenplay myself. And this guy couldn't write his fucking name on a gyro, basically, like, It was, it was the worst fucking screenplay I've ever seen in my life. It was barely kind of literate. It was like a a 120-page kind of suicide note. I thought, there's no way anybody in the world can shoot this fucking thing. There's not a chance of it. So I kind of, that was another few years kind of wasted and down the drain. And then a friend of mine, Cass Pennant, who was like ex-West Ham kind of football thug guy back in England, who's an old mate. He invited me. He had this biopic that was coming out. It was like a biopic of his life, basically, kind of a black guy who ran the West Ham football mob and who was like a Bernardo's boy and all that, had a really interesting life, Cass. And so I was along at the premiere of his film, and he goes, "This guy wants to meet you, the guy that shot my biopic, like, you know." So it was John Baird, and Cass had introduced me to John, basically, and we met at the premiere of Cass's film. We started hanging out. John was saying, "Look, I really want to do this movie, you know, and I think that I can raise the money for it, and I can do it at Hollywood through CAA. We can get it packaged, and I know that you've just signed to CAA, and I have as well, so we can go to them." And so we just went out to Hollywood, basically. And basically just, blagged it and tried to get, took all these meetings and tried to get people involved and tried to John just had written this fantastic script, and we just tried to kind of pre-sell that script. And it was a great script, and it did. We got a lot of pre-sales for it. And so when we went around, we managed to get enough money to do it. We got a lot of, we went around, we tried to get a name actor. And we kind of we talked to a lot of really good actors that were interested in it, and then we thought about James, and we thought, well, I mean, James was kind of like I couldn't really see him as Bruce Robertson because he always played this kind of very nice, kind of sort of almost like a Scottish Hugh Grant in some of these kind of movies. It was just really this kind of, and I couldn't see him as Bruce Robertson, like, even though I knew he was a working class Scottish guy, but and we went to meet him, and it was funny. It was like we had a little chat in this hotel in London, me, James, and John, and then. I thought, John and him have got to get on if this is going to work, and I couldn't see it. And I went upstairs I left them for a bit to see if they'd get on. I went upstairs and spoke to the wife, and she said, like, "How's it going down there?" And I goes, "Nah, it's a fucking waste of time. This guy's never Bruce Robertson, like, And I left him for half an hour, came back downstairs. And I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, James had just, like as actors do, he had just morphed into Bruce Robertson. He just looked, it's almost like he had grown a 5 o'clock shadow by my left. And he just looked so nasty and twisted and dissipated. I thought, this guy's not even been in costume and makeup yet. This is fucking brilliant, like, And he's, I thought, this is amazing. How did he do this? Like, So, and John's like fucking enthralled, like, So we couldn't believe it. We knew that with that script, and with James giving it that, that performance, operating at that level of intensity with it, they would have we'd have an amazing cult film at least. And so yeah, it was fabulous from then on in.
I'm going to open it up to you guys in just a minute, but first of all, who was the director who wrote the terrible script?
I'm not going to say that.
I thought I'd give it a shot.
I think, let's just say now that I think Harvey Weinstein's career is in a stronger place.
All right, and I do want to ask you, in this current climate with Me Too and Time's Up, this kind of raging men, is that still as interesting to us? Is that still as interesting to you? Has anything changed?
Yeah, I think that... it's kind of, what we're seeing, the kind of death throes of the patriarchy, really. We don't have, our economy has changed now. We don't have the basis for a division of labour that kind of perpetrated all the kind of elitism. We don't really have the basis for imperialism that perpetrated all that kind of elitism. So we don't really have the basis for patriarchy and hierarchy and elites. There's no, we're not tethered to fields and factories anymore. We all work from home. We work from these offices, where there's no real basis for gender inequality. And there's no real basis. The economics don't support it, but we still have all these elitist structures that kind of have to be dismantled right across the world, basically in every country, and and a lot of them will just fall away with the changes in the economy, but a lot of them do have to be dismantled. And I think that we're seeing these. You're seeing all these fucking strange guys in suits. They just look weird. It's just so bizarre that these people have such dominion over everybody's life. And it's like it's something that has to change, and it's something that is changing.
Okay, last question. You live in Miami now. Do you have anything to say about American politics at the moment?
Yeah, I think that it's like, people get hung up about Trump, but I think that he's a standard bearer of the kind of political philosophy of assholism, which is kind of sweeping the world. But it's a bigger thing. It's like kind of, it's this thing that, it's funny, it's like this whole idea of kind of privilege, of kind of sort of kind of rich kind of privilege, of white privilege, of male privilege, of kind of, and there's no basis for it, but it's in its death throes, and people are buying into it because, when we live in very uncertain times, and nobody's got a fucking clue what's going on. And when you don't have a clue what's going on, you're often tempted to throw your lot in with the biggest loudmouth who seems to know what's going on, but they don't have a fucking clue, and less of a clue than people that are prone to doubt. So it's like that great kind of Bertrand Russell quote, is like the problem with the world is that intelligent people are prone to doubts, and stupid people are prone to these certainties, these false certainties. And that's our task, to build democracies that kind of save us from the false certainties of clowns and idiots and despots with their own agenda.
All right. Thank you very much. We're opening up to you guys now. Turn the lights up and raise your hand. We have mics. Okay.
Hi. First, congrats on the new book. I just want to know, how was it difficult for you when Trainspotting 2 came out, given that porno was what you wrote, but then you as producer were also involved in a story that was kind of a continuation of it, that was of your original work, but it was, I guess you and John were changing it. And since porno is like 10 years after Trainspotting, and Trainspotting 2 is like 20 years after, was it a bit challenging using the original material and then incorporating you and John and Danny's new vision for what a film should be of that project? And I love that movie, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. I think it was. It obviously had to change because it was shot kind of over 10 years after when we originally planned to shoot it. It didn't happen for all these reasons, and John had some old scripts that he'd done of it, which were kind of based more, on the book. But the guys were now kind of 10, 12 years older. They weren't young guys anymore, so we had to rewrite it to think of them as middle-aged guys, which kind of, to me, it actually worked in a way, because if there'd still been youngish guys, it would have just been, more kind of madcap adventures of these kind of daft young guys who've got into this whole different thing. But because they were older, I think it lent it, it had to be a bit more about them being middle-aged and reflective and looking back. So I think it was an opportunity. We saw it as an opportunity rather than a kind of problem, really, that we could move the story on and we could make it more contemporary.
Question in the front row, yeah.
Hi, I've been a lifelong fan. Just want to thank you for all the stories, first off. I was going to ask you why we didn't get a large tapeworm eating its way through the script, but you seem to answer that already. So I'm wondering more, is there any plans to adapt Glue or Stork in the future?
Yeah, I would love to. We've been talking about Glue for a long time, and we've actually the rights have been bought to Glue, but that kind of means nothing. That just means it kind of they sit around with somebody for a long time, they try and raise the money for it and fail, basically most of the time. With independent cinema, that's kind of how it goes. With Marabou Stalks, it's like I wanted to do an animation, to get somebody involved in doing it as an animated movie. I think it would be great as an animated movie. But it's a very, very challenging one to do. I remember like Sean Connery bought the rights to it. But yeah, Sir Sean bought the rights back in the day. I'm not going to keep doing this, like, you know. And I thought, like, I thought this is going to be crazy, you know, Sean Connery kind of doing this. But it never, you know, it never actually happened again. It was a kind of sort of convoluted thing. But I remember, like, I was staying at my mother-in-law's in South London, and she goes, you know, the phone rang, you know, and I'd been out, and you know, and you know, his Fountain Bridge Films guy phoned up from LA, and it's a number we can contact you. So I gave him my mother-in-law's number. Our house was getting done up, and we're staying there. And she goes, she got the phone ring. She goes, right, Jack, all right. He goes, there's Sean Connery's on the phone for you, Jack. And I goes, all right, brilliant, Pat. Like, oh God. And I thought she was taking the piss, basically. He goes, hello, you know, Sean Connery here. I want you to buy the rights for Malibu Stock Nightmares. But yeah, but no, it didn't happen. Like, you know, maybe not a bad thing actually. Like, you know.
She's a cool customer, your mother-in-law. I think I would have been a little more hysterical. Yes, there's one right here.
Thanks for taking my question. You'll probably ask this a million times, but which character in Trainspotting is most autobiographical for you?
Oh, well, I hope not Begbie for a start, like, you know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's funny because it changes a lot. You know, I mean, I think it's like when you think about when Trainspotting first came out, it was very much Renton was the star of the show. It was his film. It was about him coming off drugs, basically. And then when it kind of it altered, it became like kind of became more about Sick Boy. It's basically about Sick Boy trying to make pornography and get revenge on Renton. He became the main character, and then it kind of became more about Begbie as this poster boy for white male rage, basically, like, you know. I think now it's become more about Spud, basically, you know, the sort of, you know, the lovable loser, the kind of representative of this dying industrial working class and all that sort of stuff. So I think that they're probably, you know, I think when you write a character, you have to draw on bits of yourself for them all, you know, and you have to kind of, you have to empathize with them all. But probably, I would say probably Renton, because he gets most airtime.
In the back?
With every next book in Betrayal by Mark Renton, do you ever worry that the actor of Ewan McGregor seems too nice a guy to fit in with the book character of Renton?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, Renton's kind of one of these kind of quite ambiguous characters. I mean, he kind of, he tries to operate within a moral framework, but this kind of sheer kind of main chance, kind of selfishness thing kind of takes over, basically, and he makes these decisions on the basis of what benefits him after agonizing over it for a long time and sort of tying himself in knots about it. But, you know, I don't really, I mean, I think that it's like actors can only really operate with the script that they've been given. And I think that, I mean, I don't know if Dead Men's Trousers will ever become a film, but I think it would be a much more, I think Renton in Dead Men's Trousers is probably a much more interesting character than he was in Porno. I think, you know, it's like, I had a lot of difficulty writing Renton again because I couldn't find the character for a long time. I found a way to reboot Begbie to make him interesting. And I found a way, you know, Spud's continued decline was full of pathos, and Sick Boy is always going to get into kind of things, but I couldn't quite find Renton. I think I managed to locate him again in the new book. And I think that because of that, I think that he would be a very strong character again for Ewan to play. He would have something to get his teeth into there.
I'm booking for the 6-hour miniseries. I think it's a 6-hour mini. Here in the front.
Sorry. Hello. I've been a victim of the police corruption for, it doesn't matter, at the highest level, detectives, everything. And I was wondering, in Filth, how did you capture that? Because it felt very real to me. Like everything, Freemasonries, all that stuff, and all their little clans they have. How do you capture that? Since
Yeah, again, it's like, I mean, it's like when it's like, there's a kind of culture around the police in Scotland, basically, that's all to do with all that kind of stuff. And you really have to get into the minutia of it all, I mean, I've kind of, I spoke to a few ex-coppers and sort of, you just kind of, you speak to people in your research and you get behind the scenes from it all, and you get a kind of, you get a sense of it, kind of drinking coppers pubs and get chatting to them and all that, and you kind of, it's interesting. It's like the kind of rank and file cop is much more. They're not like the kind of the bosses in the police force. Are not concerned with the corporate image of the police. They're basically the foot soldiers that are going out there and doing it. So they tend to be a lot more candid. If you guarantee their anonymity, as you always do when you're researching anything.
Question over here.
Hi. I'm really attracted to your characters because they're so horrible. Like, they do these horrible, horrible things, but they have hearts of gold and they're lovable at the same time. Like, I don't know. My favorite book, I think, is Sex Lives of the Siamese Twins. And I remember when I first started reading all of your stuff, switching from that Scottish slang to like regular like American English was always kind of jarring, but I think you pull it off really well. How is that for you, like to switch from the Scottish to the like American?
It was kind of it's actually quite difficult because it's not so much kind of the writing as an American. It's it's easy to pick up the kind of rhythms of speech and stuff like that. And living in America, you pick that up quite easy. The big problem is that it's a younger character basically than me, and it's a character from a completely different culture. So all the references about music and TV shows and stuff like that the character's grown up with is very, very different. And it's also you're kind of writing as a woman basically for these two characters, and that's kind of slightly different as well. It's not that different really, but there's a sort of different thing. I remember when I was on touring that book, The Sex Lives of the Siamese Twins, and it was in a big theatre in Munich, and it was the end of the tour, and a lady in the audience, kind of sort of middle-aged lady, who was quite kind of serious, kind of literary type, and she meant to say, what is it like to write as a woman, basically. But she goes, how does it feel when you slip inside a woman? And all the expats at the back started chortling and laughing. And she was mortified. She realised that kind of she hadn't expressed it well. I had to say it's generally quite agreeable, but it was like, it was one of these moments. It was one of the best questions I've ever been asked at a Q&A.
That's a tough one to follow up. Anybody? Yes, there's a hand raised here.
I lived in Edinburgh 60 years ago, and I've been back and forth very often. I thought I knew the city, but your writing and the films have changed all that. How are you treated by the good burghers of the city these days?
Treated well by the bad ones, not so good by the good ones. But I mean, it's interesting that I think every city is a house of many rooms. Every city has a lot of diversity and divergence, and I'm not trying to be to portray one city in a kind of catch-all way. There's all sorts of sides to Edinburgh. You know, there's all sorts of sides to Toronto. There's all sorts of sides to every town in the world, basically. And I was trying to look at a kind of big culture within Edinburgh that's been quite marginalised in a way and kind of been edited out of things by the whole idea of this festival city, and that's not really the reality of it as most people living in it experience it. And you know, it's like kind of I mean, you know, if you talk to people about, say, Toronto, everybody will say, oh, it's all about film. It's a great film town. It's all about TIFF, and this is great, you know. But so many people in Toronto would have no experience of the side of it, you know. So you have to kind of you have to represent all these parts of the city, all these aspects of the city, and that's really what I was trying to do. But I wasn't trying to make out that this was the one, you know, this was the one definitive truth of it all. But the reception has kind of changed. I mean, everything changes with success. At first, there was this Antichrist, basically. You're dragging the city through the mud. You're dragging Scotland through the mud. And then it kind of it established this cool cachet, and you got a lot of younger tourists and visitors coming into the city, and you got a lot of students wanting to study in the city because they thought it was being cool and sort of and a bit edgy and all that, you know. And suddenly there was this like, oh, this is, Trainspotting is kind of cool and all that, and we're Scotland and we're cool, and Edinburgh's a cool town and all, you know. So it's, you know, it just it changes with the more successful something becomes, the more people accept it and assimilate it.
Our friend in the front.
I sorry to come back for more, but I didn't know when I'd get another shot. So I noticed a lot of your work is short story based, and then you put a through line together. And with the new forms of media, be it YouTube or other video platforms, would you ever consider leasing even Trainspotting or some of the lesser known or didn't get produced Acid House stories to a format like that so they could be built in a different sort of venue?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, it's like kind of, I mean, you want everything you've written to be, nowadays, you know, there's almost no point in writing a book unless it's transferred into not so much film, but TV, basically. You want something to be, you want to create that content that's going to be used for film and TV. In some ways, that is, you know, the novel as an art form is almost kind of, it's almost become like a kind of a pre-screenplay in a sense. You know, it has become something that's there to be filmed. You know.
Do you write with that in mind? Does it change the way?
No,
you
you
write?
can't. You have to write with the, you know, you have to write with the discipline that is a novel. But as soon as you've written the end, final draft, you know, bang, you're thinking about how is this going to work as a film or a TV show. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes, you know, or sometimes it needs a lot of work or a lot of thought into how it would be transferred. I mean, that's the Marabou Stork question. Marabou Stork would be a very, very difficult thing. It'd be easy to make a really bad, trashy, exploitative film of it, but to do it really well would be very, very difficult. But there's other ones that do lend themselves to, you know, to be in movies, and there's other ones that lend themselves to being kind of like long form returning TV series. You know, so, but you don't really know until you finished it.
Question here.
Yes, I'm actually wondering what role music plays in your life now. I mean, obviously you've switched over to writing. I mean, do you still compose any kind of music, or do you have any influence in music in the films that you make? Have you ever considered, you know, slipping some of your own material into the film?
Yes, to everything. Yeah, I've kind of got back into music again over the last 18 months, and I've been doing music with a guy called Arthur Baker, who's a producer, a kind of legendary kind of hip hop producer, but also a guy called Steve Mack in Brighton, who's an English producer who's really brilliant. And I've been doing like kind of dance music, house music tracks, and I've started DJing again. I'm doing a gig in Mexico City in 2 weeks' time, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm sort of back into that big time. And I would like to do more. I would like, you know, it's easier for me now because I could never. I was always terrible. I was always a terrible musician. I couldn't really play anything. I couldn't really sing well. So you can't. When you can't do that, you can't really sort of. you can't really transpose your musical ideas into the real world. But now, with the technology again, the barriers to entry are so they don't operate in that same way. So even I can kind of get a software package and work my way around it, and kind of get a keyboard and kind of have something, make something rudimentary enough to send off to Steve Mack, and we can work on it in the studio and stuff like that. So it has kind of it has opened that door to me. So I would like to do more of that kind of thing.
Last question.
Oh, hello. Actually, I just wanted to say thank you for something. 14 years ago, you granted me the rights to a short story that was actually in Trainspotting called Bad Blood.
All right, yeah, great.
And Alan Cullen,
did it with Alan, yeah.
Alan Cullen was the star in it, and it was great process, and everything went really well. I just wanted to say
it was
thank you
really
very
good.
much.
Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Cheers.
Before I let you go, can you tell us what your next book is? Are you talking about it?
Yeah, it's a kind of a more cheerful, upbeat book. It starts off with the harvest shooting in Vegas, and ends up with a fictitious shooting in Vegas, basically 2 years later. Yeah.
Will you bring it up? Will you bring it back so we can talk to you about it again?
I would love to, guys.
All
I would
right.
love to.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank
you
you
for
all
having
for
me.
coming out.
Thank you.
Should say Mr. Welsh will sign books, so people who have books who want them signed can.